Some of you know my thoughts on anything regarding the state, anything the state claims to do. I want it to either be abolished or privatized. But let's talk about public education. There seems to be like a sector of individuals that especially freak out if I dare go against public schools in America. It's one of my least popular positions behind positions on law enforcement and military. And every so often we get to seeing teachers on strike and people talking about the public, school system is underpaid and the teachers are underpaid. And the conversation really surrounding all of that is what inspired this video. Basic research will let you know exactly where I'm at. You know I'm against them due to the means in which it's funded, which is through extortion via taxation at some level. You know, though, I think there are teachers that are well intended. There are many that absolutely suck, and they are part of the propaganda arm of the state. And though folks will admit that there is a problem, they'll hardly ever admit that they are part of it. And everybody from the administration to the teachers, they believe themselves to be an exception. But I want to center this video around the setup of American schools, the money, the logistics of it, and why I'm so adamantly against it. So in America, we generally have this K through 12 setup, all almost exclusively funded involuntarily. And basically, depending on where your parents live, you go to that school that's in that district, no matter how rotten the school is. And if you want to get technical with it, in some cases, you're basically forced to go to these schools, depending on the truancy laws. Of course, there's different types of schools. You got the private schools, you got the charter schools, homeschooling, but I'm speaking about the general setup of the public schools. So your kid is basically in the status institution from ages 5 to about 18 years of age, and he or she is there early in the morning until the afternoon. So like 6 or 7 hours, not including the extracurricular activities for 5 days or so a week. They get a summer, winter, and a spring break, but you're in the ballpark of spending 7 to as many as let's say 10 months throughout the year at a state facilitated, funded, and organized institution, depending on where you live, for 12 to 13 years. To learn shit that they will probably never utilize. Let that sink in. 12 or 13 years, August, all the way to May or June, 5 days out the week. Now, according to the OECD, the US spends more per pupil than any nation, but it ain't just about the money. No matter how much they spend, it's still a problem. The setup is a problem. They are treating individuals, these kids, like they're robots, telling them that they all have to learn this basic stuff, one size fits all, with maybe some different electives, but the cores are all the same, regardless of whether or not you're interested in it or if it plays to the kids' unique strengths and interests. Not to mention, some of these classes are just flat trash filled with half-truths, if that, maybe even lies. And then they have these tests in which they perpetuate the idea that the productivity of the kid is reliant upon that. So you have kids that may have these classes they absolutely love and should be expanding on because they are not only interested in that subject, they are good at it, but instead they must invest this time and effort in something they may just flat out hate, and it may actually be useless to them as they age. And if they don't make good grades in this class, then something is considered wrong with them. There's something wrong with that setup, bro. And to mention the culture of the school itself and how reliant the kid is upon the different factors aside from just the curriculum. It may be a subject that interests them, but the teacher sucks and is just going through the motions. They may not be good for his or her learning style, or he or she may have a bunch of classmates that are knuckleheads that interfere with his or her ability to really retain that information. That in itself could steer that kid away. Again, these are not robots we are dealing with. These are growing human beings. Now, I'm not suggesting that there aren't individual kids that may be fine, and I'm certainly not suggesting that the entire thing is useless. There will inevitably be things that the kids pick up that's going to be somewhat useful to them in life. What I'm saying is that as it stands now, it is an outdated, inefficient mess that consists of kids learning a lot of useless information. It's not only inefficient with the spending, which is obvious, but these kids aren't they're not targeting their strengths. Instead, they are learning things that they aren't interested in, but more importantly, they will never utilize. They are wasting time that they could really be using to spend like honing their useful skill sets that will prepare them for going really into their adult life. So as it stands, it's almost like they are just perpetuating these outdated and useless or dishonest ideas. Now it's set up to prepare them for like college, as if that is the only route they have to go. College ain't for everybody, bro, and that's okay. I'll do another video really talking about the expensive mess that college is, but these public schools seem like these structures is just really in place just to keep the structure in place. There are so many well-paying trades that aren't being filled that many don't even know exist because the public school system either demonizes it or dismisses it as a legitimate job. Now, of course, when I say I want to abolish public schools, there are people that say, well, some kids just won't be able to afford to go to school if it's privatized, and that's because they are operating on this outdated concept of education and looking at what is being spent right now. If the public school system was eliminated and the state let go of its territorial monopoly, you can't even fathom how the education industry will be completely changed for the better. There would be more freedom, more learning options, and therefore cheaper costs, as we wouldn't be going off whatever the hell is being perpetuated as legitimate education right now. Again, you have to look at the public school setup, not only in how they gather their funds, but the power that backs those institutions to legitimize it. Even what you know as private schools right now will be completely overhauled with the elimination of the public school system. And you'll always get those that are like, well, we need to just keep it and just change it. We got to do better. That's the problem. It's an impossible task, as what is best for you or someone else may not be best for others, and the markets will come up with other alternatives. This is why the public school system needs to be abolished. So if you want to do things your way, you have to come up with creative and efficient ways, because you don't have the funding via taxation or the power on education via laws. And this is exactly why so many people are against the idea of its elimination. Many of the folks that are part of the different levels of the bureaucracy, the administration, and the teachers themselves will probably be jobless or forced to learn like a useful trade in order to survive. Now, they're really relying upon the state, and they will never stop begging for more funding because they think they're entitled to it. If you are worth a damn, then in a freer market on education, you'll be still valuable, and you probably make more money to positively influence the lives of the upcoming generation. It's not just about the private schools or even homeschooling. It's about there being more creative and unique ways to educate that don't need validation or funding by way of the state, which creates more options, cheaper costs, efficiency. We live in an age of the internet and virtual reality. Those ideas alone would make things way cheaper. Maybe the classic classroom effect will work with some kids and be their preferable learning option. And on the other hand, you got some kids that will do better not being in a classroom at all or spending much less time in one. Some may have other options that I'm not even really able to mention that will work best for those particular kids. I'm not in any way, shape, or form suggesting that this ensures perfection. There will be successes, there will be failures, but those are necessary to work out what works out, like every other market does. There will be very cheap forms of education, charitable free forms of education, some more or less expensive, some similar, some different, but way better than this expensive monopolized mess known as public education. Again, as it currently stands, it seems this public education is really set up to just perpetuate these outdated ideas and validate, those who really wouldn't be in their positions if it weren't for the state and they had more, competition. Maybe your education will be, let's say, paid for via your insurance plan. Maybe specific job types and businesses have their own educational academies. Some of that exists already to this day, and their certification processes. Ain't that something? You can now go to school up until you're 18 years of age, then spend only 6 months getting some IT certification consisting of useful information that you never learned in school. That will all but guarantee you at least an entry-level job. Man, the more I talk about this subject, the more I think about the time that I wasted really in public schools learning a bunch of useless garbage. It seems like the vast majority of the useful stuff that I learned was taught outside of school. And the things that I did learn that was useful in school, I didn't learn enough of it, or I could have at least learned it outside of the current setup. I spent semesters learning y equals mx plus b and slopes and other dumb shit that I forgot about because I never needed it in the real world.